Hi guys, it's Katie with Grandma's House on the Mountain. I'm in my backyard this evening with the bugs and my animals. You may see or hear them. As a matter of fact, I have one behind me here. She'll pop her. No, she won't. If you ever see her pop her head around, it's a little cat. She might pop her head around. She's sitting behind me. Anyways, just wanted to say thank you guys. You blessed me for joining this group. I did not think a lot of people would join, but I'm very, very pleased, very happy, and blessed. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna have fun. If things go the way I'd like them to go, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have lots of fun. Plan on doing a few lives where we can do an interaction. You guys ask questions, whatever, talk, discuss I'm also wanting to do, for those of us who would like to do a Bible study every week. I'll show you kind of how I do it. I love verse by verse. So, I just, yeah, God's word, verse by verse, man. Only way to get it. But, anyways, that's just a couple of things I'm looking at doing. But tonight I want to talk about fertilizing your plants or your garden or your fruit trees. Anything that you have in your yard or your house that you want to keep growing and have it keep growing nicely, right? Okay. So there are a couple things that do affect plant growth, nutrients being only one part of that. I'm sorry, I just bumped the table. Apologize. Try not to make anybody seasick. So, anyways, nutrients is just one part of the puzzle for plant growth or plant thriving. Other things such as your soil type, your pH, your plant spacing, um, how you handle insects or don't handle insects, or what insects are in your area. I mean, back east, it's Japanese beetles. I remember that as a kid. Here, Pacific Northwest, slugs. Well, there's a few other things too, but we don't have the Japanese beetles out here. So each area has their own little thing, their own little special diseases you might be. The plants might be subject to in the Pacific Northwest where they wouldn't be in Florida. More wet here. Yeah, Florida gets a lot of rain, but you dry off quickly. Pacific Northwest, we sit in it. We got wet feet. We're ducks. What can I say? But also, you have, how you control your water, your irrigation, how water moves underneath your soil, the water movement there. A lot of different things. Um, Even a timely harvest can have effect on your plants. If it is a plant that you want to harvest or cut flowers from, same kind of thing. Okay, so all of these are different things. Now, in garden soil, one of the things you have to remember in soil in a house, let's say you just normal, mom and pop house, you get in a little subdivision out in the country or, out in the suburb area, wherever, and that house has been built recently. Most people buy, for the most part, a recent house, live in a relatively recent house. Okay. When those houses were built, they were typically built in a quick fashion. After World War II, they needed a lot of houses. Okay. They started putting up these houses like crazy. Just, houses, houses, houses. And didn't take time to take care of the construction trash. So what did? They just buried it. They buried it. Maybe have buried put it on top of the topsoil that was there already, and then buried it with another 2 to 4 inches of some other topsoil. Might not have buried it at all. But the thing is that with that construction stuff that's put in that, first of all, if you have 2 to 4 inches of topsoil on top of construct what I call construction soil, construction waste, the impaction from heavy machinery, going back and forth, bulldozers, cement trucks, the likes, it will impact your soil. It'll slow down root growth, and it'll prevent, actually, maybe not prevent, but will affect the movement of the water throughout that impacted soil. So that's why soil around most houses nowadays have that problem of having possible construction waste underneath. Okay. Another thing you got to worry about with construction waste is that there might be something that is not cool that leaches out and kills your plants. So that's another thing you got to worry about with construction waste. Um, like I said, with heavy construction equipment, you'll have the impaction of the soil, and will prevent roots from growing if at all, very slowly, and will affect the movement of how the water moves through that lower surface there. Um, Many soils are also heavy due to a lot of clay. Now, here where I am is very clay and rocks. I mean, I live on live on Stony Point. I have a lot of rocks. The Pacific Northwest is also very volcanic. So, a lot of up and down hills. Where I live, thankfully, it was the house was built in 76 or 77. It had previously been a field for grazing for cows and an apple orchard. Probably explains why I have 2 or 3 apple trees in my yard. But I didn't have that compaction of waste like you would, like where I used to live. I used to live down in a neighborhood that had, what I like to call cookie cutter houses. And not that they're bad, they're just cookie cutter houses. And you had all that waste you had to deal with. So that's something you got to really worry about. Fertilizer, yeah, can help with that, but it's a very small piece. The part you have to deal with when you have an issue with garden soil is you got to amend that soil. You got to get that soil to hold on to its nutrients, and be able to support, the roots, healthy root system of plants, bugs, and a healthy biodome, of or biome, I'm sorry, of all the fungi and the insects and the worms and things like that. So, excuse me, fertilizer is not going to do that for you. Fertilizer is just putting nutrients into the dirt for the plant. So you got to take, if you got bad soil, this construction waste, 8 to 12 inches of topsoil, baby. 8 to 12 inches of topsoil where you want to put plants. Hey, I would go with 12 myself. Dreamland. I wish I could go 12, but I can't because I just can't afford it. But ideally, if you have that kind of impacted soil, or what I call junk soil, you're going to need 8 to 12 inches of topsoil. Now, one way you could build a topsoil, obviously, is by organic material. Make your own compost and then spread it out there. Make a pile of your grass clippings and just keep putting it in that same spot. And then if you get leaves, you got to rake the autumn leaves. Yes, puppy. You rake them up, put them out there, and over time it'll break and it'll keep building that soil with that organic material, which is the good dirt. You won't have the impaction. What is wrong with me today? Why I can't talk? I don't know. Maybe I need more tea or something. Anyway, so you want to get rid of that impacted soil and that crappy rocky soil. You want it to be nice and fluffy and where roots can go down and go and spread out and get the most nutrients that they can suck up with those little roots that they can. You want to give them all the best that they can. Give them a running start so they have nice soil to go through. They don't have to fight. So much. So once you improve the structure of your dirt or your soil, fertilizer will come in handy at that time. But it ain't going to help you if you just sprinkle it on compacted soil and expect it to do something. Ain't going to work. Fertilizer is the nutrients for the plant, not for improving the soil. Okay. So the best way, the most effective way to build up that kind of dirt is to add that organic material. Um, it's really the only answer you're going to have, or you're going to be fighting with it forever. If you don't, if you can't do 8 to 12 inches of composted material, or just topsoil, do what you can every year. Just do another layer every year. break things up into chunks. You don't have to try to knock yourself out redoing, the whole island of England with your soil. You know what I mean? You don't have to go overboard if you can't afford it, or you just are older like I am and you just can't do that much in one day. Okay. So, but just again, that's just to remind you that fertilizer does not solve that problem. You have to work the other parts of the problem before you can get the fertilizer part in there. Okay, so you also want to remember, if you do use organic matter, that over time, just like any other fertilizer, just like the composting process normally, that organic material is going to be used up. It's going to be, because it breaks down, right? Breaks down, gone down into that good dirt, used up all the nitrogen and phosphorus and all that from that. The plant has it all up in its leaves, and it gets spent down in the dirt. So you have to remember to add more if you're going the organic composting, or adding organic material to your soil. To tell you the truth, plants do not know the difference. They don't differentiate between chemical fertilizer and organic fertilizer. So, there's plenty of chemical fertilizers that are natural. Organic, the plant doesn't know. The plant doesn't, there's no difference to the plant because it's all broken down to the same material, same nutrients that it sucks up and uses. So the plant's like, I don't want that. That's Miracle Grow. I can't eat that. I only want organic citrus peelings. No, your plant doesn't know the difference. So, don't worry about it. Yes, you grow better soil. You eventually overall grow better plants, better vegetables, better results going 100% organic, because you're not giving money to the fertilizing companies, which a lot of are owned by pharma, big pharma companies, Bayer, anyone. And the less amount of money we can give them, the better off we are, right? But don't be afraid to use liquid, chemical, or powder or shakeable fertilizer, okay, instead of the eggshells, or in addition to the eggshells. Don't ever feel bad about that, because you have to remember, when you're using organic material as a fertilizer, it has to be acted upon by that fungi and that bacteria that is in that soil before it can be broken down enough for that plant to use it. So you're not going to stick a tomato plant in the dirt with a whole bunch of, like if you use the trench method, where you take all your, let's say you had tacos, okay, all your onion clippings, your cilantro clippings, no meat, no dairy, okay, anything that grew on the ground, you can put it back in the ground. Meat didn't grow on the ground, it ate what grew on the ground. But if it grew on the ground, or if it's eggs, eggshells, eggs, you can put it in that trench. Okay, you're not going to put a tomato, put a trench, water, and expect it to go. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that, because even our bodies, when we take in those natural organic lettuces, whatever we're throwing out, that we normally eat with our taco that we're putting in the plant, even our body has to process it before we can use the nutrients. So the same thing with the plant. It has to be processed by the fungi and the bacteria before it can start using that organic fertilizer or nutrients. So it's okay, especially when you're first putting something in the ground, or the beginning of the growing season, and you just started doing the organic stuff. Your compost from your chicken house, and your trimming up your garden, your grass clippings, anything from your house, that's not meat or dairy. No meat or dairy. Okay. Um, you could do that, but it's going to take time. That plant is not just going to go instant shock, shoot up like it would with liquid Miracle Grow. I'm only using that as an example. I do not recommend Miracle Grow myself, but I'm just using an example because everybody knows what Miracle Grow is, basically. So, all right. So we have different nutrients that are in most fertilizers. And it's the three of them are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. N for nitrogen, P for phosphorus, K for potassium. K is potassium's letter on the periodic table. So that's why it's K. K for potassium, potash. Okay, so these three are the most important nutrients for plants. Now, there are other lower things like boron, calcium, um, sulfur, things like that that you might need depending on your area. Now, where I live in Oregon, the west side of Oregon, tends to be boron deficient. I have not found that have any effect on me here yet, um, but I have not had my soil here tested. This is just going off of the information off of the Oregon State University Extension Office, which Master Gardener through. Anyways, checking their records. They just said boron. They didn't say, you know, exactly what they just said. Western Oregon needs boron, tends to be deficient in boron. So there are several different states. Now each state may have its own deficiency that is different than obviously the Pacific Northwest. And hold on a second, dog, you're gonna get killed if you mess with that cat anymore. Okay, sorry, had to use the dog. But it's you could do the internet research to find out, if there's your particular area is deficient, is a known deficiency. So you don't have to pay to have your soil tested, or you could go the route of have your soil tested. Personally, if you're really, really serious, maybe even going to farmer's market level of selling your vegetables or flowers or anything like that, or fruit, um, do yourself a favor and do the testing, because that will make a big difference between profitability, making enough to sell, and maybe making enough just to eat. See the difference? Okay. So, anyways, let's get back. Nitrogen is what is needed for healthy plant growth. Nitrogen is mostly needed in the beginning and mid-growth periods. As a plant starts to get down in that lower side of, getting ready to harvest, they don't need the growth. They don't need the nitrogen to push out more leaves, push out more stems. They don't need the nitrogen to do that. They're trying to settle down their energy and focus all their energy into that fruit and specifically those seeds. The plant wants to reproduce. It knows it's at the end of its life. It's been pollinated. There's fruit on the vine, whatever you want to call it, a squash, a tomato, whatever. So at the end of its time, the plant is not focusing on plant growth or cellular growth. It's focusing on that fruit and seeds, right? Because it wants to reproduce. So that's why you don't fertilize heavily with nitrogen towards the end, mid to end, late mid to end of a plant's cycle of life, if it's an annual or a vegetable. Okay, well, even perennials and fruit trees are doing the same thing at the end of their growing season. They're all shutting down and they're shifting their focus, their nutrient focus, to making those seeds and those fruit and those fruits. Like me, I'm a fruit. Anyway, so you got to be careful with nitrogen. If you fertilize with nitrogen too late in the year, and you live in a place that is not sandy and is not deserty or very dry, you can have an issue, because like with us, we're clay. If I fertilize and leave too much nitrogen in the soil with our rain that we get here, it'll work itself down as a nitrate into the groundwater table. And a nitrate in groundwater is a health concern. So another good reason why you don't want to be sticking nitrogen on your garden in August. Okay. Everybody understand? No nitrogen late in the season? Okay. Now, you say, but Katie, every fertilizer I buy is 5-5-5 or 10-10-10 or 15-15-15. How can I get rid of the nitrogen? We'll get into that in part 2. But right now, I want to go over the next couple of chemicals that come in into play with nutrients. And the other one, obviously, is phosphorus. Phosphorus is essential for vigorous growth, and they keep the seedlings during an early wet spring thriving. Not the nitrogen, but the phosphorus. It protects it, helps protect it during that. My dog is just doing weird things. He's into digging a hole. So we'll just let him dig, right? We'll just let him dig. So anyway, so your phosphorus is what's important. It's also good for your flowers. Okay, making flowers, good roots. Okay, overall. And then potassium is very much related to disease resistance and building up of starch. Your starches is what is kind of like your skeleton or your building blocks of your skeleton of your plant. It's how it makes its stems and its leaves and their starches. So potassium is good for that. Also makes sense for the disease resistance if you think about it. If it's a nutrient that helps build the structure of the plant, that also helps in disease resistance because there's going to be no holes, or there's going to be tighter structure that disease or virus bacteria will not be able to get through. It's kind of makes sense, doesn't it? They have the building up of a tougher starch with disease resistance. See? See? Really good. All righty. So let's talk about pH. pH, really quick and dirty. Most gardens like 6.0 to 7.0. Okay. Anything below 7.0 is considered acidic. Anything above 7.0 is alkaline, is a base. Okay. So, vegetable gardens like it between 6 and 7. There are some exceptions, but let's just say generally 6 to 7 pH. Very easy to test your pH of your soil. You can add it in if you were to do the fancy dancy soil testing to tell me everything that's in my soil. You could have them do the pH with that as well, or you can just go get yourself a little pH strip kit to tell you. That'll give you enough of a clue if you need to mess with your soil. Now, if your soil is too base, let's say it's going at an 8 or an 8.5, you want to bring that down by adding acid, which is in the form of lime. So a lime, or basically it's small sea creatures shells ground up. Basically it's what it is. I mean, it's fossilized sea creature shells. Basically is what it is. Okay, so you add that, and that'll bring your alkalinity of your soil down to more acidic. Now, there are plants such as rhododendrons, azaleas, and blueberries that love acid soil. So if I wouldn't add lime to anything to your garden unless you've already done a pH test of your soil. Just don't go out arbitrarily and go, oh, I have an azalea, let's dump a bunch of lime. No, don't do that. Okay, I've seen people do that. Don't do that. Make sure you know what your soil pH is before you start messing with lime. As a side note, there is hydrangea that does change its color of its flower head based on your pH. Now, hydrangeas, just as a quick little note, are naturally blue. Mess with their DNA and their pH, we come out with some pink and some all kinds of cool colors when they're starting to mess with it. But this kind of gives you an idea of you can change the color of certain hydrangeas by adding lime. So just a quick little trivia tip there. Am I going on too long, George? Yes. All right. So we've talked about the acidity. We've talked about the different chemicals needed. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sometimes sulfur, sometimes boron. Tomatoes are really famous for needing extra calcium. That's where you get that blossom. The blossom rot on tomatoes is because of lack of calcium. Is part of it. There's a little bit other causes too, but that's a big cause. So we have types. We have different types. You have the granulated, you have the liquid, you have the powder, you have the stakes that you pound in the rain circle of your fruit tree. Water, mists, pour, spray, do this, don't do that. Mix your own one, rose, wildflower fertilizer, lilac fertilizer. No, don't spend the money on specialized. Okay, unless you really want to. Okay, I am not one to say no to convenience. Okay, I am trying to get this done before he really gets going. I understand convenience. I have no problem with, hey, you know what? I'm just too tired to deal with this. I'm just going to buy this and just deal with it. I got it. But if you're not in that situation, you can take the time to research or look at what the plant you have needs. You can mix your own. And yes, you can get just nitrogen. And yes, you can get just potassium. And yes, you can get just, you know what I mean, with just other inert. Or you can get a fertilizer that says zero point 0.5 nitrogen and 15 and 10 or something like that. You just have to look, do your research on your bags or bottles that they come in. Use glasses, magnifying glass, because I'll tell you what, even when I was younger, I couldn't read. Those letters were so small. So, if you need to really, I want you to be able to read those. I'm going to start teaching you some of the chemical names to look out for as we start going through some of these processes so that you don't, for instance, have to buy a name brand of something when you can get an off brand or a different brand that has the same thing. You know what I mean? That you don't know about because everybody always goes with the other. So yes, I got you covered on that. So anyway, so yeah, there's different different packaging. The best thing to do is to find out the pH of your soil. Do some research to find out on the internet, possibly through your extension service of your state universities. They're awesome. Us master gardeners, we're all over the country. We're all trained by the extension service. I was trained by the Columbia County, Oregon State University Extension Service. So I have a little Oregon University pin that says I'm a master gardener. Yay! I'll wear it sometime, show you guys. But I have no problem, and would love to tell you guys how to make up your own mixes. Like I said, if you have any questions, I know we're in the middle of July right now, kind of pushing the end of some of the season. However, if you have some flowers or some squash and things like that, pumpkins that you want to push that are still growing, they still got a good another maybe even up to 60 days left to get some of that put going. So, we'll maybe if you guys would like, just, like I said, put in the comments or send me a message or just put it out there. Hey, I'd like to know about this. How do I take care of this plant? Or whatever. So, I've talked way too long, longer than I was planning on it, but we will definitely have at least a part two because there's some more I want to go into. I can even tell you exactly what manure from what animal is the best, but we'll keep that for part two. All right, guys, have a good day. Today is Fertilize Friday. Remember to fertilize your plants, spray your tomato plants with aspirin spray, and if you're taking part in the I have powdery mildew or whatever on my squash leaves, spray them with watered down milk, baby, during the sun. The milk has an enzyme that the sun changes it to a certain enzyme that will kill that powdery mildew or a baking soda spray. But I haven't gone over that yet. But if you already know that, then that's a good day to do that too. Every 7 to 10 days, spray your plants with your concoctions. Cast your spells on your plants every 7 to 10 days. They'll thank you for it. All right, guys. Until next time, have a good evening.